Next is Attis. Concerning the virgin birth claim, the Olympian gods, or Zeus, cut off the male organ and cast it away. There grew up from it an almond tree, and when its fruit was ripe, Nana picked an almond and laid it in her bosom. The almond disappeared, and she became pregnant. Nana abandoned the baby Attis. This is hardly a parallel to the biblical claim, but a desperate exaggeration. Again, December 25th is irrelevant. After Attis was tended by a he-goat, Attis fell in love and was not crucified, but castrated himself under a pine tree, which in no sense can be seen as death by crucifixion on a tree or a cross. Then Cybele restored Attis to life. Many critics refer to this as the resurrection of Attis, though there is no mention of a tomb or a 3-day period. Additionally, apologetics author Charlie Campbell states, the alleged resurrection of Attis isn't even mentioned until after 150 AD, long after the time of Jesus. Furthermore, Dr. Walter Burkert, a Greek religion scholar and author, stated, there is no evidence for a resurrected Attis. Even Osiris remains with the dead. As the Princeton theologian J. Gresham Machen points out, the myth contains no account of a resurrection. All that Cybele, the great mother goddess, is able to obtain is that the body of Attis should be preserved, that his hair should continue to grow, and that his little finger should move. Dr. Ronald Nash adds, it was only during the later Roman celebration, after AD 300, of the spring festival that anything remotely connected with a resurrection appears. Concerning Krishna, in Joseph Campbell's book Occidental Mythology, page 342, he stated, Krishna, whose terrible uncle Kansa was the tyrant king, the Savior's mother Devaki was of royal lineage, the tyrant's niece, and at the time when she was married, the wicked monarch heard a voice mysteriously, which let him know that her 8th child would be his slayer. He therefore confined both her and her husband in a closely guarded prison where he murdered their first 6 infants as they came. According to this story, the mother Devaki had 7 children before Krishna was born. This would not make Devaki a virgin. Distinguished professor of Hinduism in India, Vasudha Narayana, PhD, University of Bombay, said, I've never heard of Krishna being born of a virgin, either through Sanskrit or vernacular texts, or even folklore. And born on December 25th, wow. The text says explicitly he was born on the 8th day of the waning moon in the month that now comes between approximately August 15th and September 14th. I can't imagine why people would sit back and cook up all these conspiracies. The only mention of stars in Krishna's birth within Hindu literature is in the Bhagavata Purana, chapter 10, 3:1-5. Then there was the supreme hour, all auspicious and most suitable, with the constellation of Rahini rising, and all the stars and planets in a favorable position. Everywhere was peace. The multitude of stars twinkled in the sky, and cities, towns, pasturing grounds, and mines were at their best. The minds of the saintly oppressed, as they had been by the Asura, Kamsa and his men, turned perfectly contented when in that situation the kettle drums together resounded with the unborn one to be born. Twinkling stars in the sky are far from the biblical account of a star in the east signaling Jesus' birth. In the film Zeitgeist, author Edward Carpenter is cited for providing this information on Krishna's supposed miracles and resurrection. Carpenter, in his book Pagan and Christian Creeds, stated, to go into the parallelism of the careers of Krishna, the Indian sun god, and Jesus would take too long, because indeed the correspondence is so extraordinarily elaborate. He then cites Robertson's Christianity and Mythology as a reference. Then Robertson transcribes the outline of the well-known Krishna saga as follows. The son of Devaki, the 2 brothers grew up in the midst of the shepherds, slaying monsters. Arrived at adolescence, the 2 brothers put to death Kamsa, and Krishna became king. He continued to clear the land of monsters. After having been present at the death of his brother, he himself perished, wounded in the heel by the arrow of a hunter. Thus we read in the well-known Krishna saga that there is no virgin birth, no star, and no miracles. The comparisons are not so extraordinarily elaborate after all. Robertson also stated, the case in favor of the assumption of Christian priority has been in a general way strengthened by the precise investigation of Hindu literature, which has gone to show that much of it, as it stands, is of far later redaction than had once been supposed. Thus, Zeitgeist cites Carpenter, and Carpenter cites Robertson, who admits that Hindu literature is of much later publication than previously assumed, and therefore any similarities between Christianity and Hinduism were borrowed by the Hindus and not vice versa. In the long Indian epic poem, the Mahabharata, Book 16, there is an account of the death of Krishna. It reads, "Having restrained all his senses, speech, and mind, Krishna laid himself down in high yoga. A fierce hunter of the name of Jara then came there, desirous of a deer. The hunter, mistaking Krishna for a deer, pierced him at the heel with a shaft and quickly came to the spot for capturing his prey. Coming up, Jara beheld a man dressed in yellow robes, wrapped in yoga, and endued with many arms. Regarding himself an offender and filled with fear, he touched the feet of Krishna. The high-souled one comforted him and then ascended upwards, filling the entire welkin with splendor. Krishna died and ascended, but there is still no resurrection, as claims Zeitgeist. It's hard to imagine how this blue Indian man could be mistaken for Jesus, or a deer for that matter. The only similarity we have here is an ascension, which is not even mentioned in Zeitgeist. Even if you do want to take Zeitgeist's premise that the ascension account might have been borrowed, then who borrowed from who? The earliest testimony for the complete text of the Mahabharata dates to the 1st century AD by the Greek sophist Dion Chrysostom.